investigators, Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy with episode 273 of Spy Curious. The last few weeks we've been talking about gaps in knowledge, skill, training, information and attitude in the VWA that Evel Knievel couldn't jump over and have resulted in those involved being transferred to the WorkSafe Victoria sub-Antarctic headquarters where they're in charge of poultry and cannot access any form of email for communications or phone. So we're going to be looking today at what it is called when the police or the courts see people going along with fraud. So there's a name for it. So you know when you hear it, you can avoid it. We're also going to recap over some of those issues where the VWA wanted to funnel their investigators into an industry association that had an association with an RTO where the person in charge of that organisation and a committee member of that association took photos without the knowledge or consent of inspectors at the councils in Queensland and then posted them on social media. And if you're the lady with the tattoo on your right foot, I don't think you're ever going to have to work again once you find out about it and lawyer up and engage the Toowoomba City Council in regard to that matter. So we're going to recap all those things today and have a look at it. So it's the knowledge, skill, information, training and attitude gap, and basically the funneling of people into it. We're also going to recap on some of the issues around locating subjects, as that came up this week in one of our various social media accounts. So we'll have a look at that. A reminder too that Ambulance Victoria was exposed last week as a state government department where $3.5 million worth of fraud was undertaken by some 6 people there who charged for overtime that they didn't do. So they've been given an opportunity to respond to those allegations. And I think with $3.5 million, they'll be able to afford a very good defence in what they're doing. Of course, IBAC will look at that and go, well, we're going to seize your superannuation and pay it back with that. But as you'll see here, IBAC have an association with the VWA's chosen funneled industry association where they speak. And I'm sure IBAC in their gift registry have recorded all those free breakfasts of scrambled eggs on toast and unlimited coffee, because that's what they do. They check that sort of thing. So IBAC will be looking into this, but I wouldn't want to be at IBAC in 2024. So let's get on with it. I'll be back to tell you very soon about 2 worse cases of claims management corruption than the one we have exposed here. Now, if you're upset about what's been exposed here, this is the minister. You can get in touch with him and tell him all about what you've seen in relation to this program over the last 4 episodes. He'll only be too happy to look at that for you. All right, so here we go. Circumstances, they do a great job, and IBAC came the heavy on it. Now the boot's on the other foot because IBAC have cozied up with the industry association where the investigator in his classes for peak services was taking photos of people in the group from behind without their permission or consent. Peak services have a legal team for this sort of thing. And, you know, victim blaming was going on and they do not do anything about sexual harassment up there. It went on. The people that were victims of it don't even know, and IBAC has backed it by presenting at their associations, employing their staff, that sort of thing. It's a double standard from IBAC, and it's basically castrated their ability to operate in Victoria. So a rogue regulator that does go rogue. The police have an actual term for it because they deal with them all the time. Now, I'm not talking about the Licensing Regulation Division here, and I'm not talking about SLET. I'm talking about the equivalent of ICAC or the CCC, that's IBAC in Victoria. So what they've done is they've gone and sort of like cozied up to an industry association that's got a committee member that's done the wrong thing, and this, you know, they're just going ahead like it never happened. Over the years, we've discussed some quite interesting terminology in this program. We had the joke, that is where bent police officers manipulate the system to get away with whatever corruption they're doing, like 120 breaches of the Victorian Police Licensing Regulation Division Conditions of Approval. Or it might have been police in New South Wales doing something that involved IBAC or something like that. That's what the joke is. Now, a brick, as we saw in one of our previous episodes, is where police plant evidence. So basically, they're giving the suspect a brick. So today we're going to learn the actual police term for a regulator like IBAC that 100% enforces on innocent hard-work Victorians, public servants and police, and turns a blind eye to corruption and enabling it elsewhere. What is the term for that? I'm sure you could give it your best guess, but we'll ask an expert. Here's Megan to tell us what the term might be.
Just go with the flow.
No, it's not called going with the flow. No, that's totally not what it's called. So we're going to look at that term today and find out precisely what it is. So we've seen that last week how IBAC get involved in soft investigations, grab headlines, and they have booklets they give out telling everybody else how it should be done, and they get the press and all that sort of thing to grab headlines, do soft lady frauds in TAFEs and stuff like that. It's not really investigating Mr. Biggs when you've got soft stuff like that. They get $63 million. So what is it called? Was Megan?
You gotta go with the flow, baby.
No, Megan wasn't right. Maybe Leonardo might be right.
You gotta ride with the tide, dude.
Leonardo is very, very close. So what the police call it when the regulatory authority is corrupt and turns a blind eye to that corruption is swimming with the tide. So that's what it's known as. So you have the joke, you got a brick. We've had other things as well in our vocabulary system here, but that is the internal police speak for it. It's a very difficult situation when you have one rule for one and other rules for everybody else. Now imagine a police officer pulling you over today and saying, oh, you're 5 kilometres over the speed limit, it's 60 kilometres an hour. And then tomorrow they pull you over and go, oh, you're 5 kilometres over the speed limit, it's 55 kilometres an hour. You can't do that. And that is what's being applied right now. It's confusing, it's unfair, it supports a power imbalance, which is not right, and it all involves sharing of images, one standard by IBAC in one place, and a completely blind eye to it in another area, regardless of the victims. And the victims don't even know it happened. But I tell you what, if their partners, their boyfriends, their husbands, significant others, fathers, whatever they find out about it, could be one hell of an occupational health and safety. We've got an interesting job, haven't we? That was a really, really informative Locate Subjects video. So I hope that sorts out what you can do and what you cannot do. Now, we're talking about really serious stuff. The invisible funnel that nobody wanted you to know about or find out about. That funnel nobody can see. Don't mention the war. Don't mention the funnel. And it involves the VWA funneling its staff into one industry association with no record of any meetings, no record of who paid for the lunch over those meetings and the beer and the wine. And the taxi or the Uber to it. There's no records in existence. If they were, they'd be in the VWA's gift register. Now, I've been through it very thoroughly, and I haven't found a lot of information in there. But I did get one. And basically it goes back to 1969 and the construction of Tullamarine Airport, where Inspector Simpson was there checking on site safety for the VWA. And during the course of his work, the demolition crew from Calibrian Demolitions of Victoria came up to him and said, look, Inspector Simpson, we've found a little kitten in the demolition of the old farm barn on the airfield where the Tullamarine Airport's going to be. And Inspector Simpson said to him, guys, do you mind if I have that? It's going to be my girlfriend's birthday and I'd love to give her the little kitten. And he put it in the gift registry, which is the correct procedure then and now, although they don't use it as much now or at all to cover up what they've been doing. So he's put it in the gift register, but it was a little tom kitten, so a little male kitten, and obviously he must have given it to his girlfriend, but unfortunately he had to be put down. Not the kitten, Inspector Simpson, his wife found out about it. So it can have some negative impact when you do record things in gift registries, so be very wary of that too. So what are some of the other try-ons in claims fraud around Australia? Well, back in the day, the heady days of 1995 to 2000 with HIH insurance and CIC insurance and what was going on with them investigating every claim that ever happened. There was a lot of claims going out to a lot of investigation firms, and to get on the panel of that organisation, if you wanted to be a panel member in Queensland, an investigation agency supplying professional support services to the claims managers in charge of that, you had to basically supply sex workers. So I can't show you this because it's adult content. You had to supply sex workers to the claims managers of those organisations. Now, basically, that's the system back then. Now, of course, it all collapsed, it all fell over, it went broke, and the boss of it went to jail. He had nothing to do with the sex workers, they were the people that worked for him. All right, so that was going on in Queensland openly. In your face, just like the VWA, right? Just like that down there in Victoria where you have to join one industry association. That's it. No choice for any others. None. There was no process in selecting it. There was no checking of its background and its associations with dubious RTOs that had 120 licensed private investigation qualifications cancelled by the actual regulator in the same state where the VWA tripled their workload as a regulator for their mates in the industry association. So that's just as much in your face as it was in Queensland between 1995 and 2000, with you having to provide sex workers to get on the panel. What is the difference? Not a lot of difference. Why were they funneling? Because the intent was to make every investigator in Victoria eventually who did work cover claims become a member of the AIPI with no choice, no other alternative. The people that slogged their guts out at the ASIP for the last 25 years, totally ignored and shut down. No work cover no work safety inspector was allowed to go to their meetings in 2019 onwards. But suddenly, out of the blue and with no record of it, it's okay for the AIPI. It's really, really sus. Now, the other one, the other claims management fraud, again, wasn't the VWA, right? This one quite low key, quite in your face. And honestly, the people that come up with the scheme to funnel you into the AIPI, if you're a licensed private investigator down in Victoria, they are, like I say, they're operating now out of an igloo in the sub-Antarctic. If they've still got their job, they're gone. They've got no influence. The minister is hopping up and down, not as much as the CEO is, because they've got quite comfortable jobs, and it's a $6 billion scheme. And, they got rid of these people who are a far away, remote location because they tried it on and they got caught. It was too in your face and they failed, and it stopped, right? The knowledge, skill, information, training and attitude gaps are going to be addressed, all right? It's going to be addressed by the VWA. And like I say, those gaps are so big that Evel Knievel couldn't jump over them in his motorcycle heroic show from 1977. That's how big those gaps were and why it was so in your face. $6 billion scheme. They thought, we are not vulnerable. We can do anything we like. Doesn't matter. We won't get caught. We can funnel who we want, where we want. We've got $6 billion. We're a showcase government, state government department, and they are. But they heaped all that work on the one regulator to do the analysis of it years before and found it wanting. Okay. There are approximately 1,600 licensed private investigators in Victoria. That's old information of a couple of years back now in 2022. May have changed 100 or so up or down, I don't know. You're watching episode 273. The other try-on was by lawyers on the panel in Queensland of WorkCover. Now, what the lawyers decided to do was, we have won a 5-year contract to allocate investigations legally to investigation agencies for workers' compensation, slip, trip and falls, lifting, hit by moving object, stress, fall from heights, back injuries, psychological injuries, whatever. Okay, we've got a 5-year contract to do that. For every investigation we issue to the 8 appointed investigation firms, we're going to charge them a $75 allocation fee. Now, this is similar to what the VWA who have found out recently in the $145 bribes between Picker and ISTA, right? So it's a $75 allocation fee in Queensland to go along with the scheme. So just like the $145 bribe that has no benefit to the injured workers of Victoria, the $75 investigation allocation fee surcharge add-on had no benefit to the injured workers of Queensland when they tried that on. So therefore, the investigation agencies kicked up, and those panel law firms were kicked off the workers' compensation scheme. And I think they were sort of like left with nothing to do, so they had to go and work for electricity firms where they couldn't do any charges with add-on surcharges or stuff like that. So basically, that's 2 scandals on top of what the VWA have been doing this year down in Victoria that have happened in the past. Now, they're not all of them. There are others, okay? But the whole thing, and my whole point here is, if you're an investigator and someone tries to come up to you and say, you've got to join this industry association and there's no choice, something's wrong. There isn't a politician in Australia that's going to say that AIPI is better than the AISP. There's not. They're not going to say that. No way. Are they going to stick their neck out where 200 votes could win an election? Now, the AISP, okay, it hasn't got 200 members, but it's got the contacts to get 600 votes voting for the person who does the right thing and doesn't want them to pay $250 a year for an industry association that does nothing for them. And we'll put up the price next year to $8,000 a year membership because you have to join it. Not going to happen, not going to be funneled. It's fraud. Motive and opportunity in a $6 billion screen equals fraud. On Friday this week, people, I'm going to catch up with a few things we haven't done for the past few weeks as we've been busy with the VWA and what's been going on down there. And I hope you can join me for that. And we're going to look at some job vacancies and what's going on in the industry and some advice of a determined investigator in Victoria who has got himself work down there and how he did it. You'll hear all about that on Friday on Spy Curious. You've been watching episode 270. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. We're going out in our usual way.